So this is the title of a talk I'm scheduled to give tomorrow evening, and it's supposed to be a 3/4 of an hour talk, and I'm going to see if I can actually give it in 3/4 of an hour. So of course the people who come to that talk in the Science Café in Leiden in the evening, they know something about the Dutch Lucia de Berk case probably. They have seen the abstract of this talk. And in fact, there it is. There's the abstract. Well, of course, that's a Dutch abstract. Here's an English translation of the abstract. And I'm not going to read this now, but I'm going to concentrate on the differences and similarities between the Letby case and the Lucia de Berk case. And I will also mention the English case of Beverly Allitt, which in some ways it seems to have provided the blueprint for what appears to be a real epidemic of murderous English nurses. And there are the three nurses I will be talking about. Lucy Letby on the left, Beverly Allitt top right, Lucia de Berk bottom right, who really sadly died last summer, much too young, and basically resulting from really serious health issues which came about because of her imprisonment. And I might tell the Dutch people something more about that. Okay, so what are the similarities? Well, here's on the left-hand side here, two key items of the Lucy Letby case, the famous roster chart. That's here, the spreadsheet with Lucy Letby always present present on the shift when a suspicious event has been identified. And this is what's written here is a lie, or at least it's misleading, because it's not the only shifts where suspicious events were identified. Some were identified, and later it was found that Lucy Letby wasn't there, and then they were removed again. Moreover, the data is incorrect, because we know that Lucy Letby was not present many times, and indeed one of these 25 was removed by the judge as the trial started. The jury got to see a list of 24 indictments, and it's just a list of 24 indictments. And naturally, if Lucy is accused of having directly caused events on these various shifts, night and day dates to various babies, then she has apparently been found to have been there at the time. Now, later we found there are probably mistakes in this column as well. There are X's there which shouldn't be there. Actually, that's a similarity with the Lucia de Berk case, and I don't know about the Bev Allitt case, but notice the Bev Allitt case also had a roster chart of precisely the same kind. Red column here, Bev Allitt is there every time whenever there are all these events happening at these times to these patients. The two purple rows, purple or bluish rows are actually events which happened outside the hospital, but at the home. And I'm not quite sure why Allitt is not marked as having been. Well, Allitt is associated with an event here which actually happened at home, but they apparently haven't coloured it red. Maybe I made a mistake in putting colours into a chart, because this chart on the right, top right, has been reconstructed from some screenshots from documentary films. So it has been painstakingly reconstructed with the help of, I should say, Lucy Turnbull, which is another very interesting case. But she's also been assisting me doing some reconstruction of the Alit case. Here's Lucia de Berk's, basically the same thing, the roster chart. It's actually a summary from 3 roster charts. A year at the Juliana Children's Hospital, certain ward, medium care, unit 1. 4 months earlier at another hospital on ward 42, and the same 4 months at another ward of the same hospital. All right, same period here. Lucia de Berk was only present 5 times. No, sorry, there were only 5 incidents. And incidents here are deaths, so there were like 5 deaths. Lucia was present just once, and she was present on one of the 5 occasions when there was a death. Sorry, with incident. Incident here and here means death. And this is the most striking one. There were 9 incidents. Now that can be a death or a collapse, an event which has been labelled suspicious. And Lucia was there at every single one of the events which happened at the Juliana Children's Hospital. Actually, later one of these had to be revised. 9 became later 8. And the statistician who had done a statistical analysis of these 3 tables was asked to redo the analysis after scratching one event here. This is the spike. So there's a spike in deaths at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Early neonatal deaths, annually, 338,722. Well, everybody can see that. Everybody will be happy to call that a spike. The hospital staff recognized it as a spike. They were dismayed and perplexed. It seems nobody could explain it at the time. So there was an unexplained spike in deaths. Whether it's statistically significant or not, you can argue about. Different analysis which you can be done with using various assumptions. And you could say, well, in 6 years, there would be actually quite a big chance of such a big spike under some probabilistic assumptions. So it's actually not statistically significant that there was a spike, but of course it is seen as being significant that it was in 2015 and in the first half of 2016, because these 7 early neonatal deaths belong to the first half of that year, and that year and a half is the period that Lucia Letby is fully qualified and accused of causing a number of these deaths, about half of them, in fact. And other people have said, so that means there are 2 spikes. And you could say that. Statistically, I'm not quite sure if you should say that, but that's something which people have said. So here are the statistics of the Lucy Letby case, and of course in Lucia de Berk there was also a spike in deaths and a spike in unexplained collapses, surprising and unexpected, unpredicted. In Bev Alit case there was also a spike, but I'm showing on the right hand side a graphic representation of the coincidence of the roster data associating the nurse with events in many people's minds, and part of the case and the prosecution case. Okay, now there are systematic differences, certainly between UK cases and Netherlands cases, and part of them are due to the question who actually writes the law, who's responsible for the law which is consulted by lawyers and judges in court cases and of course referred to by prosecutors and police inspectors. In the UK, that's the second point here. UK has case law, also known as common law, which means that though there are laws passed by Parliament which define various crimes, for instance, and indeed determine the possible sentences for various crimes, how many years you get for this, that, or the other. That's determined by Parliament, I think. But most of the law consists of the rulings of past judges in past cases. And that's called common law for, well, historical reasons in England, namely being that it basically applied to all of England. So that the cases of all the courts in England, and Wales being part of England, were the resource which judges could use to find out what they can do in cases. They look for cases which are similar enough in order to be able to use the rulings of past judges. We want law to be consistent. That's a very, very, very important principle. It shouldn't make a difference who you are and when you are or whatever. If the same things happen, then the law should make the same decisions about your guilt and what punishment you obtain. So common law is a good thing. Case law is not necessarily bad. In the Netherlands, we call the system a system of statutory law. Judges consult the laws written in the law book, the Wetboek van Strafrecht. There are actually law books for different kinds of law, and judges consult what has been written in those books. Now, those books, of course, actually have been largely written by lawyers, and of course they have been passed by Parliament. Netherlands is a democracy, as is the United Kingdom, allegedly, and so there are definitely the distinctions are not as clear-cut as the labels suggest. Also, the laws in the law books have probably been compiled by lawyers, but they have been done in a systematic way at certain time points, whereas in England they just build up like autumn leaves on the floor of the forest, and going back a long way. During the Second World War, a British person was convicted of witchcraft following laws passed following jurisprudence from the 17th century or the 18th century, because that person was actually using seance sessions to communicate with the spirits of drowned sailors during the Second World War, and she was taken to court for this because it could reveal information to the enemy about the location of British battleships and so on. Right? Okay. So it's Now the other main, so there is like where the laws come from, where you can find them, and the other difference is the manner in which trials are conducted. The UK has an adversarial system, and that's thanks to the Magna Carta, which was an agreement between a weak king and powerful barons in 1200 something. and basically said that if the king had a problem with one of the barons, then the fellow barons would be the ones who would decide who was right. And over the centuries, that slowly extended to persons owning sufficient property, male persons, of course, and later even to women, and later also to people without property, and so on. But the adversarial system was basically started in the UK then, and you could say it maybe goes back to ancient Germanic customs, tribal customs. Disagreements between parties are solved by a gathering of the elders of the tribe, possibly we could say. The Netherlands has an inquisitorial system, and that's where a board of wise judges try to find out what is the truth concerning some dispute or difference, and or concerning what has been the cause of some terrible things, and the judges are free to call which witnesses they like. Of course, witnesses may be proposed by different parties involved. It gives the judges a much more active role. They are not in the adversarial system. Their role is to adjudicate. But again, the difference between the two systems is not as big as the labels appear. And in the adversarial system, judges have an important role in summarizing the case of the two sides and presenting summaries of it to the jury, and moreover hinting at the jury what they might want to conclude. And of course, finally, the judge who decides the sentence after the jury has given its verdict also summarizes the case, summarizes the case against the convicted person, if there's a convicted person. So the differences are not as big as they appear, and at higher levels in the British legal system, at an appeal, for instance, the appeal will be, the fact finders, as they are called, will be a board of judges rather than a jury. Okay, let's move on. The question is, how long is this going to take? Whoops. Okay, now there are big cultural differences between the UK and the Netherlands, and other differences. There's much time has gone by. Time has gone by between Lucia de Berk and Lucy Letby, and many things have changed. Rise of social media. There are systematic problems with the NHS. There are also systematic problems with other UK institutions, and I just wanted to mention that in both countries that disasters occur from time to time, exposing big problems with various central state institutions. In the UK, I'd like to mention the Grenfell Tower fire, where flammable cladding on a renovated tower block caused a whole load of deaths in a disaster which was absolutely avoidable, and actually a repeat of a similar disaster in Hong Kong a few years earlier. The post office scandal, where hundreds of sub-post office masters and mistresses got jail sentences because of what actually had been errors in the Fujitsu supplied system, accounting system. And so there was a cover-up of the post office, but also of a multinational corporation, Fujitsu, which took a long, long time to fix. And the thing to notice about Grenfell Tower fire and the post office scandal is just how long it took for the mistakes to be exposed and for the persons who had suffered to be compensated in one way or another. A long, long, long time. Systems are reacting to catastrophes are terribly slow. But of course we have the catastrophes in the Netherlands too, and I mentioned here the Dutch childcare benefits scandal and the Enschede fireworks disaster. I mean, we also have cataclysmic disasters of fire and destruction. And how long it took for the cause of these disasters. Well, first of all, for these disasters to be recognized. The Dutch childcare benefits took a long time to become exposed to the public, become known to the public, and it is still reverberating because still there are families who have not received compensation because the Dutch government is so mingy about handing out compensation and has to put in place bureaucratic rules for doing it, and they turn out to be painfully slow. And nobody steps in and does something about it. After it's left the public interest, it just drags on and on. Okay, next slide. Here I want to say something about why possibly the Lucia Letby case is going to take an enormous length of time to become satisfactorily resolved. And it's actually due to something which one normally thinks of as being a good thing, and actually as the fruit of the Enlightenment, the principle of separation of the powers, the judiciary, the lawgivers, and those who enforce law are three separate powers, and they should not interfere with one another. And this is obviously a good thing. It's part of how modern democracies function. If you want to call the UK a modern democracy, okay, it is a democracy in a developed nation in the present days. And the thing is, the problem is that UK parliamentarians just simply don't want to know about the Letby case because they come up with excuses. The relevant ministers don't want to know about it. They make announcements such as Lucy Letby's speculation is causing the families enormous stress. Investigations are ongoing. It's noise. The critics of the trial were not at the trial. They did not see all the evidence. Well, actually, the jury did not see all the evidence either, even the evidence which was brought to the trial, because scientific reports of prosecution experts are not given to the jury to see. They're supposed to only listen to what the experts say on the stand. So it's basically nobody who has any power at all is responsible. And so they don't take action. And actually, I suspect this is an evolutionary consequence of how the system has evolved over the centuries. It's a very old system. There have been shake-ups from time to time when big things happened, like 1066 and 17 whatever. There have been a few big shake-ups, but there was never the Spanish Armada didn't invade, the Spanish Empire didn't occupy the UK, Napoleon didn't, the Germans didn't. Such shake-ups would have been opportunities to modernize the system, as they were, for instance, in the Netherlands and other countries in Europe many times, several times. I think the UK criminal justice system has evolved so that nobody with any power need or even can take responsibility. Basically, the rich will be okay. They can pay for the best lawyers and the best scientists and so on and so forth. And of course, they have a lot of power to influence the media too. But ordinary folk don't have that kind of power. And so when it goes wrong, which it does as often, if not more often than in other countries, nobody can do anything about it, and certainly not poor people. Right. Now, the next part of the talk is a summary of the case for the people who don't know about it, people in the Netherlands. And so maybe try to quickly read what's written here. Okay, the case, the trial, was about events which took place between and including June 2015 to June 2016. And what seems to have happened is that a new stream of extremely vulnerable mothers and babies were being admitted to the Countess of Chester. First the maternity unit, mothers of course, to give birth, and then the neonatal intensive care unit, or neonatal unit, for care needed after birth. And the first bad events were in the June of 2015, and in 2 weeks there were 3 deaths and 1 collapse involving 2 pairs of twins. And both of those pairs of twins, the mothers had, the pregnant mothers during pregnancy had no pre-existing complications which could very well cause trouble later, but they were admitted anyway into a maternity unit, which at the time was a so-called level 2 unit. And it was a unit which was therefore not equipped or staffed or experienced in caring for babies who needed the care which can be given at a so-called level 3 unit. And where did this new stream of babies come from? It seems to have been precipitated by closures in North Wales of hospitals, or of maternity units of hospitals in North Wales, and possibly also due to the ambition of the people in charge in the Countess of Chester, which long ago had a level 3 unit. And it's a basic fact of NHS financing, accountancy, that babies needing level 3 care, well, babies needing truly intensive care, for every day they're in the hospital gets more money. The babies need more care. They need to be cared for one-on-one by nurses, for instance, by definition. The next level down are high dependency babies who need 1 nurse per 2 babies. And then you have the others who need basically 1 nurse per 4 babies, and such nurses can be, of course, of lower paid, lower qualifications. They can do nursing, but the nurses you need in intensive care and in high dependency are nurses who have special training. And they were few in the Countess of Chester because many highly qualified nurses and experienced nurses had been fired in order to save money. Okay, so there were like four really serious events in just 2 weeks, including 3 deaths and 1 really serious collapse. And 3 was basically the number of of deaths which that unit experienced per year up till then, or up till recently. And sometimes less, sometimes 1 or 2. So 3. In fact, the doctors already started saying, looks like we've had our annual quota, right? Already. And it's still only June. Now, actually, the doctors caring for those babies had also made mistakes. That is now very, very clear. But at the time, that was not clear to anybody much, except perhaps the doctors themselves. We will probably never know. And we certainly didn't find that out during the trial. I think it is now very, very clear and very well known by combining all the material which we now have about the situation of those babies. Now, those disturbing incidents continued for a whole year, and so over the course of the year there were about 16 deaths, which is really shocking, and many of them were from June 2015 onwards. As many as possible, one could say, were associated with Lucy Letby. And Lucy Letby was often there. She was one of the most highly qualified nurses, and she was very enthusiastic to work extra shifts when they needed more nurses, and they couldn't do it with the ones who had been regularly put into the roster. So she did lots of extra shifts. She lived alone. She was young. She was saving money for her house. And she was eager for enthusiasm and really enthusiastic about her job. So the bad things did carry on happening for a whole year, and Lucy Letby was associated with her really from the first ones by especially the consultants who were basically responsible for the clinical running of that unit. After the year, June 2016, it became too much. Everybody realized something had to be done. There had been internal investigations, and management was convinced that Lucy Letby had nothing to do with it, whatever, and consultants were adamant that she did have a lot to do with it, but they could not point to anything concrete. There was no evidence against her, and there was nothing to accuse her of, except for just being there. But of course, I've just explained why she was there. She was put there. She was put there when those things happened. So at that point, management degraded the unit from level 2 to level 1. So then, of course, the deaths stopped because they were not taking seriously ill babies anymore. Lucy Letby was taken off nursing work, patient-facing work, and put in given administrative duties in another part of the hospital. She wasn't allowed even to talk to her colleagues. And allegedly this was to protect her. Management thought they were protecting her, actually, because what they also did, management, was call in the RCPCH, the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health, who came in and investigated the spike in deaths and investigated the deaths and the events. And they determined that they all seemed to be pretty explicable and natural, except for a few, which they couldn't decide what had actually caused the death at any detail. And they suggested that forensic investigation would be needed to determine what had happened. And the reason that it would have to be forensic investigation was because sufficient investigation had not been done at the time. Blood samples had not been kept, and so on and so forth. They actually blamed the consultants for not having done the necessary investigation into the bad things that happened when they happened, immediately after. By the way, all the deaths were registered as natural deaths, coroners signed death certificates, so on and so forth. Sometimes the cause was extreme prematurity, but that could be a very, very well justified cause. So by now, towards the end of 2016, Lucy Letby has been basically exonerated by management and by the RCPCH, and she started a formal complaint procedure that she'd been removed from the ward and forbidden to talk to her colleagues and put on administrative duties, and was perfectly justified to do that. Indeed, because it was upheld. External persons came in and came to the conclusion that 7 consultants had behaved really badly. 6 paediatricians and 1 obstetrician. They were ordered to apologize in writing and in person for the damaging things they had said about Lucy Letby, and they basically malicious campaign to get her thrown out. And it actually was clear at that moment that disciplinary actions were about to start against them. Well, this convinced Breary and Jayaram that they had to do something, and they went to the police. And we now know that they told the police things which I would say are lies, and if at best half-truths. They told some of the truth, but definitely not the whole truth. And they misled the police majorly, and the police became captivated by the idea that they were about to crack the biggest case of their lives, and basically the biggest hospital malpractice, criminal practice case since Bev Allitt. They talked about Bev Allitt, among one another, and to the doctors and to the management of the hospital. Everybody had Bev Allitt in their mind. Well, the case was reported in the newspaper, and things from there went, well, firstly, extremely slowly. A huge batch of medical notes, presumably selected by Breary himself, were sent to the police. Police didn't know what to make of them. They were all mixed up by the time an expert saw them, and the expert was a guy who turned out of nowhere, a retired paediatrician, Dowie Evans, offering his help. Here are some pictures of a few of these people. This is Dowie Evans, the magician from Carmarthen. This is Stephen Breary. This is Ravi Jayaram. I see them as the main players. John Gibbs played quite a big role too. And he was nearing retirement. He now has retired, and he's now in training to become a Church of England priest or vicar. So he's starting a new life in the church. And he has admitted to having qualms that maybe they got the wrong person, that they might have got the wrong person. Right, so he still believes in their serial killer, and certainly believes he basically did the right thing, but maybe the police investigation resulted in the wrong person being found guilty. These are the main two, and I think Breary was the main actor, and Jayaram was an eager disciple. And maybe the less said about them, the better at this moment. Well, let me just say they are all extremely respectable persons. They are all highly educated, upper middle class people with high salaries, so high social status. They come from the same social circles as do judges, right? The creme de la creme of society. people of natural authority and of great learning and of great experience, all of them. So these are people, certainly these three are people you should take seriously. You could take this person seriously too. If you would look into him, his background, I think you shouldn't have. Many witnesses were granted lifetime anonymity by the judge. Others are so shy of social media that no single photo of them can be found on the internet. And if I would publish some of their names, I could get into deep trouble. And who knows what will happen in the future. I have got into deep trouble before by revealing things which I should not have revealed, but I think in the public interest. So, right. And I wish I could find a photo of certain persons, but I won't even say their names now. There are various group photographs of Countess of Chester leadership at Christmas parties, Christmas dinners, and staff excursions to a golf club. So if you would actually know what somebody looked like, you could probably find a photo of them on one of these photographs, group photos, where probably most of the consultants and most of the executive committee are all there enjoying one another's company at Christmas or at summer excursions. Team building, esprit de corps. Here are two judges, and on the left is the judge who took care of the Lucia Letby case, and here's another judge who's currently close to ending the inquiry into the reasons why management did not act on consultants' warnings and earlier, and did not stop Lucy Letby in her killing spree earlier. So her job is, given that Lucy is a killer, why was she not stopped earlier? Which is an incredible waste of time, I would say, given what many people know now. But of course, Lady Thirlwall is not sort of allowed to even admit that she knows, because she's a very careful judge. So she's taken on a prestigious job, and she's going to do what she's carry out the task which she has agreed to do, task set by government, by Parliament. Indeed, it's a statutory inquiry. Fortunately, it is digging up a huge amount of evidence which goes to show, with the other evidence which is already in the public domain, that Lucy Letby is innocent. One wonders what she's going to write in her report, and one wonders if anybody's going to read it, actually. So, this is a quick story of the trial. Evans came in, helped out the police by fantasizing the diverse and sinister explanations of more than 30 events. Letby was found not to have been present at some of them. The roster chart of the 25 initial indictments, was created with help of 2 further events found later by Brewery, or 2 further pieces of evidence. The 2 insulin cases. Right. Then the wheels of justice turned extraordinarily slowly, and all that time no UK newspaper could publish what international experts were saying out loud. For instance, and I was even saying things out loud in the Netherlands and putting them on my blog, and I got visited by Dutch police, who delivered me a letter from Cheshire Constabulary telling me that if I came to England I could be arrested and that I should take down my blogs and Twitter posts. The first really noticeable international criticism was an article in the New Yorker, May 2024, so that is about the time when the first trial finished. And that article was, the UK citizens who use internet were not allowed to read that article, which was actually an action by the publisher, I think it's Vanity Fair, who have a major office in the UK and publish various UK magazines, and they didn't want to get in trouble with UK authorities. Anybody with a VPN could read the article, and of course anybody who actually had a subscription and received the paper edition, or who went to a newsagent and bought it, it could read Rachel Aviv's incredible article, fantastic article. And she had actually, of course, talked to us, mentioned here, and done her own research and talked to other experts and so on and so forth. Brilliant article. Lucy Letby applied for an appeal, and it was turned down initially by the same judge on his own. And after the turning down of the appeal was complained about by Lucy's lawyers, there was actually a sitting, an inquisitorial type sitting with 3 judges now, who confirmed again that she would not get an appeal. And the reasons were basically procedural reasons, and one of the reasons being the medical evidence which you're talking about now is based on medical literature and medical science, which was known. So the original defense team could have used that, could have used the people who wrote the papers which were quoted by Dewey Evans, paper on air embolism by Shu Lee, and so there were no grounds to appeal. Okay, so according to current jurisprudence, according to past rulings of past appeal courts, indeed, there is no reason to reopen the case. There is an opportunity to try to, and that is the CCRC. But again, the CCRC is going to have hard work, even if the CCRC decides that it seems that Lucy Letby is innocent, even if they would actually think that on the basis of everything which is now known and which has been put in forward to them, the Court of Appeal would not be obliged to reopen the case on this grounds that there is no new evidence in some sense. Well, Thirlwell has provided new evidence. For instance, we know that Jayaram lied to the police and to the court. But of course, the court will come back saying, well, the jury didn't only... there are 15 full life sentences. So maybe one of them is unsafe because Jayaram was over-enthusiastic in what he told the police. But you've got to overthrow 15 full life convictions, and no British judge is going to be enthusiastic to do that. So, what is going to happen? Well, new revelations go on, and just the last 2 weeks there have been fantastic new videos put out on YouTube with telling things some of which I didn't know, things which some people knew but was not widely known. And it's all incredible. It's all incredible. Everything just keeps on heaping up. There's no reason whatsoever to suppose that Lucy Letby ever committed any crime. At all. There's no reason to believe any baby was deliberately harmed by anyone. So not just Lucy Letby, but there was no other killer. Dr. Gibbs. They didn't get the wrong person. There was no person, though you certainly caused some bad things to happen, and so did your other colleagues, your past colleagues. So what is going to happen? It's all going to take a long time, and given past experience, we might have to wait 20 years. It might be never. It could be that the CCRC comes out with a beautiful report in a year, say even in this year, and with powerful recommendations. And it might be that the Court of Appeal decides to accept such recommendations. And what I just hope is that the system is going to realize that the longer they hold out, the bigger the scandal is going to be. And I suspect we are just waiting for one or two key persons to retire so that they will pipe down, and the noise, I hope, is going to keep on growing. The noise, as it is called. Thirlwell called it noise. The system calls it noise. The government calls it noise. The minister of this, that, and the other all think it is just noise, and that we have to trust our judiciary and trust our police and so forth, because the noise is harming people's trust in the police. I think that was the recent conclusion of the Minister of the Interior, or whatever she's called, Home Affairs. This ongoing noise about the Lucy Letby case is harming the British public's trust in their wonderful police force. Well, it's a wonderful police force, but it does make mistakes, and I would have more respect for it if it could admit sometimes sooner to having made a mistake and not be the last body which realizes. Well, just today there has been a new article in the Daily Mail, of course, of an reporting on a letter which the Chief Constable of Cheshire has written to a journalist at the Daily Mail. No prizes for those who know anything about the Daily Mail and their journalists, and who is always the journalist of choice in order to write on behalf of the establishment in this case. Ridiculous. Okay, absolutely ridiculous. Today I wrote a letter to Cheshire Constabulary saying that I would like to have an opportunity to discuss with a high-ranking person about the case in private, in confidence, without any publicity. I'm prepared to come all the way to Chester to do that at my own expense. I'm wondering what my answer is going to be. Well, I didn't say much about the evidence in the case, and I'm wondering what the time is. It is just going on, so this is going to be too long for 3/4 of an hour. But I want to mention the roster chart and the spike, and I have mentioned them. I have mentioned insulin poisoning, and they are controversial. It is controversial. It is a controversial topic. There is the green post-it note. That's kind of a confession. For me, the main things are nobody ever saw Lucy do anything wrong. There is no medical or forensic proof of deliberate harm to any baby by anyone. No trace of psychopathy in Letby's entire life history. No motive. Every single suspicious event has a natural explanation, and sometimes it's an explanation which reflects poorly on those consultants, especially the ones who took their accusations to the police and who had been forced to apologize to Lucy Letby in writing and personally and in person, and who were suspecting that they were about to be reported to the GMC, which could possibly result in their losing their jobs, their lovely jobs. So there is a green post-it note. Won't talk about it. The parallels summary: Lucy Letby, Lucia de Berk. There is an alleged confession. There is a forensic test which is just points maybe which might be, the test results might be caused by deliberate poisoning, but on the other hand they might not be. There is an unexplained spike in deaths, and there's an inexplicable and extraordinary coincidence always present when bad things happened. And it is now absolutely explicable, known to be explicable. And the spike has been explained, of course, but both are explained by statistics and by statisticians. And the Chief Constable of Cheshire has just said that there's no statistics in this case, and statistics is not used in any criminal cases. Well, I'm sorry. I want to talk to him. What about Alit? Just to round off, there are doubts about the Bev Alit case. There are huge and disturbing parallels, and I can't say that I think she's innocent, and I can't say I think she's guilty. I just don't know. I'm absolutely certain Lucy Letby is innocent, and that Ben Geen is innocent, and I'm pretty sure Colin Norris and Victorino Chua are also innocent. So there really was an epidemic of killer nurses, and the epidemic has got quite a bit to do with Cheshire Constabulary, and also with the experiences of Bev Alit case being passed on to police in neighbouring areas and so on. The police have learnt what you can do to nail a killer nurse, and so that is what is happening. And finally, I'm going to round off with a cheerful note. Who is the Countess of Chester? Well, on the left is a past Countess of Chester, and on the right is the present Countess of Chester, whose the real name, I believe, is Kate Middleton. And the thing is that being Count of Chester is part of being the Prince of Wales. Since Wales has been absorbed into England, and the Count of Chester is the Prince of Wales is automatically gets the Count, the function of Count of Chester or Duke of Chester or whatever it is, and his wife is naturally the Countess of Chester, and the past Countess of Chester, this one, actually laid a foundation stone when new buildings were put down of the Countess of Chester Hospital. So the Countess of Chester Hospital has a relationship with past and present Countess of Chester, of which it is, I could say, justifiably proud. And I'm wondering when this Countess of Chester is going to visit the hospital again, and if she'll ever say anything about it. Right, I will now stop this recording and find out how much I overran. Stop recording.